Do you know what keeps the world standing? You probably think you do. Steel, concrete, glass fibers, silicon chips. We were taught that modern civilization was built on steam, electricity, and technology, and at first glance it seemed correct. But this is an illusion. Everything you see, every surface you touch, is only a shell. Beneath it lies a single truth. Imagine this. Tomorrow morning, the sun still rises, trees are still standing, but one thing is missing: oil. Planes cannot take off, ships remain in ports, ambulances cannot move, supermarket shelves empty within hours. Hospitals struggle to keep emergency systems alive. Armies freeze in place, and soon even the digital world begins to fall silent. Modern life doesn't collapse in an explosion. It simply slows down, and then it stops. Because the truth is this: even though our world looks like it is built from steel and glass, it was established on black, viscous liquid hidden kilometers underground. Oil, black gold. We like to think that oil is a fuel, something we burn to move our cars or fly planes. But that's only a fraction of the reality. Oil is not just something we use, oil is something we live inside. It is in the clothes we wear, the plastics around us, the medicine that heals us, the asphalt beneath our feet, and the fertilizers that feed billions. Most objects in your daily life are either made of oil or cannot exist without it. Your phone, your computer, your credit card, even your toothbrush. To understand how deep this dependency goes, look at your morning routine. The fabric on your skin is oil turned into threads. The sole of your shoes, the frame of your glasses, the waterproof layers protecting you from rain. Oil surrounds your body like a second skin. In the bathroom, it continues. The bristles of your toothbrush, the bottle of your shampoo, the plastics and chemicals that define modern hygiene. All petrochemical creations. We wake up in oil, clean ourselves with oil, and cover ourselves with oil. And this is not just about comfort, it's about survival. Remove oil from the equation, and modern medicine collapses. From syringes and prosthetics to imaging machines and life saving drugs, the foundations of healthcare are built on petrochemistry. The molecules that heal us today are the transformed remains of organisms that lived millions of years ago. But the most disturbing truth is this: we eat oil. This is not a metaphor. Modern agriculture runs on fossil energy. Fertilizers, pesticides, and industrial farming systems are products of oil and natural gas. Without them, billions would starve. The energy used to grow, harvest, process, and transport your food often exceeds the energy that food gives you back to your body. With every bite, we consume the transformed fossil fuel. So the real question is not, would cars run without oil? The real question is, was modern civilization ever possible without it? This video is not about the history of oil. It is not about what oil is. It exists to ask a far more uncomfortable question. How did a substance buried silently for millions of years become one of the most powerful forces shaping human destiny? Oil did not build empires, but it kept them standing. It did not create ideologies, but it decided their wars. Oil redefined speed, erased distance, mechanized conflict, globalized economies, and accelerated time itself. And every acceleration has a price. In this documentary, we will not look at oil as a fuel. We will examine it as a system builder. How it formed, how it was discovered, how it merged with engines and empires, and how it turned us quietly into a civilization addicted to it. Welcome, this is the Age of Matter, and today we open the black box. Part 2: The Hidden Truth. In the previous episode, we opened the black box and saw that oil is far more than fuel. Now it's time to go deeper. Because the age of oil is not simply a period where cars move, it's an age in which civilization itself was redesigned. When we look at the modern world, we see an invisible network everywhere: production lines, supply chains, logistic routes, financial flows. And at the center of this system, there is one silent substance: oil. A large part of the food we eat today exists because of it. Agriculture, transportation, and industrial production all feed from the same source. Oil does not just move us, oil feeds us. We usually define oil as energy, something we extract, burn, and consume. But seeing oil only as a fuel is like using a diamond only to cut glass. Oil's true power lies in its chemistry. Its hydrocarbon chains can be reshaped almost endlessly, hardened into machinery, softened into packaging, thinned into films, clarified into lenses. Oil is not just energy, it is the modern world's ability to take shape. This is the hidden truth. Oil is an obedient matter. Throughout history, humanity worked with stubborn materials: stone, wood, iron. Shaping them was difficult and slow. Oil changed this completely. It became whether the system demanded. And this transformation did not stop at materials. Oil became the architect of the modern state. The centralized states we know today, with large populations, complex bureaucracies, and global reach, depend directly on oil's energy density and logistical power. Before oil, distance weakened authority. With oil, geography was conquered. States could move armies across continents and enforce control at unprecedented speed. In this age, borders are no longer drawn only on maps, they are drawn underground. Pipelines, refineries, ports, storage terminals. Power is measured not only by armies, but by control over energy flow. Logistics is the backbone of this system. Oil compressed time and distance. What once took weeks now takes days. This acceleration did not just increase trade, it created the global economy itself. The interconnected world we call globalization exists because oil made it possible. Modern cities do not produce their own survival, they consume it. They live as long as the flow continues. But oil's influence goes even further. Oil is not only a physical force, it's a financial one. It moves through contracts, futures, insurance systems, and price charts. That's why crises in the oil age do not always begin with shortages. Sometimes they begin with rumors, embargoes, or the possibility of conflict. And when they do, the entire system tightens. Because oil has become the central nervous system of modern civilization. Societies in the oil age are not dependent on energy itself, they are dependent on continuity. When the flow stops, everything stops: production, transportation, security, health. This is the hidden truth of oil. It doesn't just run machines, it connects systems, synchronizes economies, creates dependency, and globalizes crisis. In this age, power is no longer just about producing. Power is about controlling the flow. Who produces? Who transports? Who prices? Who can shut it off? The answers to these questions drove the real map of the modern world. In this episode, we saw that oil is chemistry, logistics, state, and money, the invisible architect of modern life. But every architect demands a price. Oil made us so dependent on itself that we struggle to imagine a world without it. So, how did this addiction begin? To answer that, we must go further back, to a time before oil powered anything at all, to a silence process that began millions of years ago. In the next episode, we go to the beginning, to the moment oil was born. Part 3: The Origin. We built the modern world, designed its systems, and became addicted to a black liquid. So, what is the substance really? Where did it come from? Most people grew up believing a simple story: oil is made of dead dinosaurs. It's a powerful image and completely wrong. If oil were made of dinosaurs, it wouldn't exist in such vast quantities. The truth lies much deeper in time and much smaller in scale. Let's rewind far beyond human history, beyond pyramids, beyond cavemen, even beyond the age of dinosaurs. We are going back hundreds of millions of years to a warm, humid Earth dominated by shallow seas. The planet looked nothing like today. Continents were still shifting. The atmosphere was reaching carbon dioxide. Oceans were warm, shallow, and teeming with macroscopic life. And our story begins there. The ancient oceans were filled with phytoplankton, algae, bacteria, tiny organisms with no awareness, no ambition, no power. Yet, one of history's greatest ironies is this: the foundation of modern civilization was laid by these silent creatures. They were living solar cells, absorbing sunlight, photosynthesizing, and locking solar energy into carbon bonds. They were the first carriers of what we now burn as fuel, liquefied sunlight. Eventually, they died. Trillions of macroscopic bodies sank to the ocean floor like snow. Under normal conditions, they would have decayed and returned to the carbon cycle. If that happened, oil would never have formed. But in certain deep, stagnant zones, oxygen could not reach the seafloor. Without oxygen, decay stopped. Bacteria couldn't break their bodies down. Instead, this organic matter mixed with clay and sand, forming a dark, sticky mud known as sapropel, the infancy of oil. Then came time, and pressure and heat. Layer upon layer of sediment buried this organic mud. As the Earth's crust shifted and compressed, temperature rose. Deep underground, heat and pressure slowly began to cook the material. Geologists call the critical zone where this happens the oil window. Below about 60 degrees Celsius, organic matter turned into waxy kerogen. Above 150 degrees, it breaks down into gas. But between those temperatures, under the right pressure, over millions of years, oil is formed. Complex organic molecules break apart and reorganized into hydrocarbons, dense, stable chains of carbon and hydrogen. The ancient plankton is no longer plankton, it becomes crude oil. Once formed, oil doesn't stay still. Being lighter than surrounding rock and water, it migrates upwards, seeping through porous stone. If nothing blocks its path, it escapes the surface and evaporates. But when a hard, impermeable cape rock traps it, oil accumulates inside reservoir rocks, waiting. This is why oil is not the same everywhere. Its quality depends on how long it cooked and under what conditions. Light oil flows easily and is rich in fuels. Heavy oil is thick, difficult, and energy intense to refine. Some oil is sweet with low sulfur. Some is sour, corrosive, and polluting. Geology determines not just how oil exists, but how powerful it becomes. And oil is never found as an underground lake. It exists inside rock, like a water in a sponge. Extracting it is not digging, it's engineering, technology, risk. When oil was first discovered, no one understood what it would become, because oil was born slowly, but once unleashed, it accelerated the world. The liquid you put in your car today is not just fuel, it's the memory of a sunny day hundreds of millions of years ago. Solar energy captured by microscopic life, buried, compressed, and transformed by the earth itself. The planet stored this energy in silent stone vaults, kilometers underground. And when humanity opened those vaults, it didn't just find power, it found a force that would reshape history. Now we close geological time, we leave rocks and molecules behind. Next comes humanity, the slow world of muscle, wind, and wood. How did we live before oil? And what happened when this black blood entered our veins and made the world accelerate beyond control? The story now passes from chemistry to history. Part 4: Before Oil. Leaving behind the silent story of rocks, pressure, and millions of years, we return to human history. The world before oil entered our veins was very different from today, smaller, slower, and far more ruthless. Without understanding that world, we cannot understand why oil was welcomed not just as a fuel, but as a savior. Let's step into the old world. It was a quiet world, a dark world, and above all, a slow one. Human history is often told as the story of kings and wars, but beneath it all lies a simple truth. Human history is the history of energy. The more energy a society can access, the more it can grow. The more energy it can move, the more it can expand. For thousands of years, a single equation defined civilization's limits: muscle power. The engine of the ancient world was the human body and the animals that served it. Every stone moved, every wall raised, every road built required sweat, blood, and time. Transportation meant carrying loads on backs or pulling them with animals. This wasn't just difficult, it was a civilization leash. Economies were trapped by what historians called the logistic constraints. A horse pulling grain had to eat grain itself. The farther it traveled, the less profitable trade became. Cities could not grow large. Consumption could not drift far from production. Civilization was confined to narrow circles drawn by muscle. Speed was another unbreakable limit. A Roman legion moved no faster than an army centuries later. Across thousands of years, art and philosophy evolved, but speed did not. Humanity moved at a pace of galloping horse or a sail catching wind. If the wind stopped, the ship stopped. If the horse tired, messages waited. Nature dictated the rhythm of civilization. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the old world reached a breaking point. Wood, wind, and water were no longer enough. Forests vanished. Shipbuilding stalled. Europe faced a deep energy crisis. The organic economy had hit a wall. And so humanity looked underground. There it found coal. Coal launched the Industrial Revolution. It was compressed forests, packed with far more energy than wood. Steam engines turned coal into mechanical power, engines that did not sleep or tire. For the first time, humanity escaped pure muscle power. But coal had a fatal flaw. It was solid. Solid fuel is heavy, dirty, and difficult to move. Steam engines were massive. They required constant feeding, endless labor, and thick logistics. Trains ran only where rails existed. Ships sailed only as far as their coal bunkers allowed. Energy was powerful, but immobile. The coal age industrialized the world, but it did not liberate it. Cities clustered around factories because energy could not travel far. Skies turned grey, streets filled with soot. Even light was scarce. Night was inefficient and feared. To push back the darkness, humanity turned to whales. Whale oil burned bright and clean, and it became one of the most valuable resources of the era. To light streets and homes, oceans were stained with blood. Entire species were driven to the edge of extinction. This was the depth of humanity's hunger for dense energy. By the mid 19th century, the world was stuck. Steam was powerful but clumsy. Trains were fast but chained to rails. Ships moved but only between ports. Energy existed, but it wasn't flexible. Range defined power. When supply lines broke, armies stopped. Economies remained regional. There was no global system. And then oil appeared. What made oil revolutionary was not simply that it burned. It was dense, enormous energy packed into small volume, and most importantly, it was liquid. It could be pumped, transferred, stored, and moved with ease. Engines could shrink, mobility could explode. For the first time, energy became portable, but the world didn't yet realize this. In 1850s, oil was nothing more than a foul-smelling substance, a strange medicine sold in pharmacies. a sticky nuisance seeping from the ground and ruining crops. No one saw the power sleeping inside it. Until, in a small muddy town called Titusville, Pennsylvania, a stubborn man decided to drill into the earth. The limits of the old world were about to break. The age of muscle, wood, and coal was drawing its final breath. The liquid power that had waited millions of years underground was ready to rise. And when it did, it would not just open a well, it would open Pandora's box. Part 5: The Discovery. The pre-oil world had reached the ceiling of energy density. Humanity wanted to move faster, go further, and build bigger systems, but the energy it had simply wasn't enough. And then, for the first time, humanity encountered oil consciously. But this wasn't a sudden revolution. Oil was not new. This is why this chapter is not truly a discovery, but a rediscovery. For thousands of years, civilizations had encountered oil in the wrong way. In some places, it seeped the surface, dark, sticky, full-smelling. People didn't see fuel, they saw trouble. In ancient Babylon, bitumen, natural asphalt, held massive walls together. Oil was glue, not energy. In Byzantium, naphtha fueled Greek fire, a terrifying weapon that burned even on water. Oil was destruction. In China, it ruined salt wells and was cursed as burning water. The substance was there, but humanity lacked the technology to understand its language. Oil waited patiently until the mid-19th century in the forests of Pennsylvania. At the time, the world was desperate for light. Whale oil prices has exploded as whales vanished from the oceans. Campion lamps lit homes and burned them down. Darkness was cheap, light was a luxury. The crisis brought an unlikely figure onto the stage, Edwin L. Drake. History calls him Colonel Drake, but that title was a marketing lie. Drake was a former railroad worker, hired to collect the strange black liquid seeping from the ground near a muddy town called Titusville. At the time, oil was scrapped from puddles and sold as medicine, snake oil with a new name. Drake and his backers believed it could be refined into lamp fuel, but collecting surface oil was useless. They needed volume. Drake proposed something radical. If people drilled for salt, they could drill for oil. In Titusville, the idea sounded insane. Oil was believed to seep, not to rest underground. Drake became a joke. His well was mocked as Drake's folly. His money ran out. His workers quit. His investors sent a telegraph ordering him to stop. By chance, the message arrived too late. On August 17, 1859, at a depth of just 21 meters, oil quietly rose inside the pipe. No explosion, no Hollywood geyser, just a dark liquid creeping upward. When Drake was told, the axis of history shifted. That small hole in the ground became the first real wound in the planet's crust, and the modern world would emerge from it. What followed was not a gold rush, but something faster and harsher. Forests turned into chaos. Boom towns rose overnight. Pithole City exploded into existence and vanished just as quickly. Oil created wealth at terrifying speed and destroyed it just as fast. But the true revolution didn't happen at the wells, it happened in homes. Crude oil was distilled into clear, yellowish liquid, kerosene. It burned brighter than whale oil. It didn't explode like champagne, and it was cheap. For the first time in history, light was no longer a luxury. Families could read at night. Work continued after sunset. Social night expanded into darkness. Oil gave humanity 4 or 5 extra hours every day. And deep in the oceans, something else happened. The whaling industry collapsed. Demand for whale oil vanished. Whales weren't saved by environmentalism, they were saved by market forces. Rock oil was cheaper and better. By the 1860s, Drilling spread across the world. So much oil flowed that people stored it in whatever they could find. Whiskey barrels, pickle barrels. The standard oil barrels was born from chaos. But the story has a dark twist. During refining, a lighter, volatile liquid appeared, too dangerous for lamps. Refiners hated it. They dumped it into rivers or burned it as a waste. That liquid was gasoline. For decades, gasoline was garbage. Oil had brought light, but not yet speed. For that, humanity needed engines, engineers, and men who could turn chaos into a system. The discovery was complete. Now came transformation. The age of light was ending. The age of engine was about to begin. Part 6: Oil and Engine. Our story ended with a strange irony. The world was lighting up with kerosene, while gasoline, a volatile and explosive liquid, was being dumped into rivers as industrial waste. But gasoline was not waste. It was a monster without a cage. By the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution had reached its limits. Steam and coal had transformed production, but they had failed to deliver freedom. Steam engines were powerful, but enormous. Coal has industrialized the world, yet it had not made it mobile. People were still prisoners of rails, ports, and depots. Where the tracks ended, freedom ended. At this exact moment, a critical idea emerged. Instead of burning fuel outside the engine, what if combustion happened inside it? This was the internal combustion engine. By compressing fuel and air inside a small chamber and igniting it in controlled explosions, energy could be shrunk, and shrunk energy could move. Coal was useless here. Solid fuel could not flow, evaporate, or explode cleanly inside the piston. But there was a liquid that could: gasoline. The substance, once dumped as waste, turned out to be the perfect fuel. Oil and engine finally found each other, and from that union, a new era was born: the age of mobility. For the first time in history, energy entered the heart of a moving machine. Machines no longer had to stay where energy was. Energy traveled with them. The difference seems subtle, but it changed everything. Movement was no longer tied to rails. Motion was liberated. This technological break had an economic phase as well. And here, one man stood at the center: John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller had built his empire on kerosene. He was the king of light. But the invention of the electric bulb threatened to destroy his market. If oil meant only lightning, the oil age would be short. Then engines appeared. Cars were slow and unreliable at first, but they were free. No rails, no ports, no depots, just motion. Rockefeller realized that gasoline he had treated as garbage was now more valuable than gold. Standard Oil transformed overnight, from a lightning empire into an energy empire. Another visionary soon joined the stage: Henry Ford. Ford turned the automobile from a luxury into tool. Assembly lines replaced handcrafts. Cars became cheap, simple, and durable. As vehicles spread, roads were built. As roads spread, cities expanded. As cities expanded, demands for oil exploded. A self-reinforcing cycle was born. When oil and engines united, not only individuals moved, societies moved also. Economies moved, armies moved. Nowhere was this clearer than in war. Just before World War I, Britain made a radical decision: switching its navy from coal to oil. This was a strategic gamble. Britain had coal, but not oil. Yet, oil-powered ships were faster, required fewer crew, carried more weapons, and could refuel at sea. Coal ships could not. Speed had become power. The same logic conquered the skies. The first airplanes flew on gasoline. Steam engines were too heavy, batteries too weak. Only oil's energy density could lift machines into the air. Humanity's ancient dream of flight was realized not by wings, but by refined oil. The world became three-dimensional. Distance collapsed. Power was no longer about size, but about speed and reach. This was not just a technological shift, it was a geopolitical revolution. But every system has a price. Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled pipelines, refineries, transport, and pricing. It was the first true energy empire. In 1911, the United States government broke it apart as a monopoly. Yet, even divided, oil continued to flow, and Rockefeller became richer than before. There was no turning back. Humanity had tested liquid energy. It had been intoxicated by speed. But this power would not only fuel cars and planes, it would fuel something far darker. The age of gunpowder was ending. The age of machines was beginning. And as the world drifted towards World War I, a single question echoed through the minds of generals. Do we have enough oil? Part 7. The War Machine. When oil and the engine united, the world accelerated. Distances collapsed. Time compressed. Movement became cheap. But the first real test of this speed did not come in peace. It came in war. War is the most ruthless laboratory for technology, and in the oil age, the language of war changed. History books often speak of generals, courage, and strategy, but in the 20th century, wars were no longer won by bravery alone. They were won by logistics, by the black fluid system operating behind the front. When World War I began, armies still fought with an old mindset: cavalry charges, bayonets, horses. When Paris taxis were seized to move soldiers, no one realized this was history's first motorized military operation. But trench warfare revealed the truth. Horses were helpless against machine guns. Trains were useless without rails. Tanks without fuel were piles of steel. Planes without fuel were broken wings. Fleet without fuel were floating coffins. Oil became the invisible hero of war, and often its invisible killer. World War I introduced a new reality: total war. Not only soldiers, but factories, ports, railways, and energy lines became targets. Tanks rolled across battlefields, fighters hunted the skies, oil-powered warships dominated the seas, and behind the noise of battle, a silent struggle determined victory: energy superiority. As the war ended, French Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau wrote a prophetic sentence: "A drop of oil is vital as a drop of blood." This prophecy came true, brutally, in World War II. World War II was the first true oil war. The Axis powers shared a fatal weakness. They had powerful armies, brilliant engineers, but little oil. The Allies, scattered and diverse, controlled the vast majority of global oil supplies. Blitzkrieg was born from necessity. Germany had to strike fast because it could not sustain a long war. The invasion of the Soviet Union was not about Moscow, it was about Baku's oil. At Stalingrad, German tanks did not just freeze from winter, they starved for fuel. In the Pacific, the logic was the same. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor because the United States cut off its oil supply. With months of fuel left, Japan chose a desperate gamble over slow surrender. The decisive moments of the war were written in logistic maps, not battlefields. American tanks were not always superior to German ones, but behind them stood Texas and Oklahoma. Fuel flowed endlessly. German tanks were abandoned not because they were destroyed, because they were empty. Even advanced jet aircraft sat useless on runways without fuel. General Patton captured the new reality perfectly. Don't send me food, send me gasoline. The army now marched with engines, not stomachs. When the war ended, borders changed, but the meaning of power changed even more. Whoever controlled oil set the rules. Whoever lacked it was condemned to lose. This truth sealed the fate of the Middle East. After the war, the great powers turned their eyes to the oil beneath the sands. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq. Oil security became national security. Cutting off oil meant strangling a state. World War II taught the world a brutal lesson. Modern war is an industrial consumption contest, and its fuel is oil. Tanks killed soldiers, bombs destroyed cities, but pipelines, tankers, and refineries decided victory. Oil won wars, but it also multiplied them. Because oil was powerful, and everything powerful becomes worth fighting for. A drop of blood, a drop of oil. Clemenceau's words would echo far beyond the 20th century. Now, leaving the smoke and dust of war behind, we turn to the next question. How did this power redrive maps and borders? Part 8, Map of Power. When the wars ended, when tanks fell silent and planes landed on runways, oil did not leave the stage. On the contrary, it filled the vacuum left by war. Because in the oil age, power is not won only at the front, power is won on the map. In the old world, maps were drawn with mountains and rivers. In the new world, maps are drawn with what lies underground. There are two maps of the modern world. One is the official map hanging at the United Nations, showing borders and flags. The other is the real map, found in intelligence rooms and boardrooms of energy companies. On that map, there are no country names, only reserves, pipelines, straits. This is the map of power. Oil did not change geography, it changed the meaning of geography. After World War II, regions once ignored suddenly moved to the center of global politics. The Middle East was no longer a periphery, it became the heart of the system. In February 1945, just days after the Yalta Conference, a meeting took place abroad on USS Quincy. American President Franklin Roosevelt met King Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the ruler of Saudi Arabia. That handshake marked the birth of the modern Middle East. The deal was simple: oil in exchange for security. From that moment on, the fate of the region was not tied to its people, but to the reserves beneath its sands. Quiet desert societies became the epicenter of global geopolitics. Wealth arrived, but so did instability. Look at the Middle East map. Have you noticed how straight the borders are? Those lines were not drawn to reflect tribes or cultures, they were drawn to control oil basins. After World War I, diplomats used geological maps, not demographic ones. Borders were designed for flow, not stability. And ever since, blood has followed those lines. Oil can bring wealth, but it also brings intervention, coups, and endless crises. This is what we call the oil curse, or more accurately, the intervention curse. Because oil is not consumed where it's found, it must move. Oil flows like blood, and if a vein is blocked, the system collapses. That's why choke points matter. The Strait of Hormuz carries a fifth of the world's oil. Close it, and the global economy panics within hours. This is why fleets are stationed nearby. This is why threats to close it shake markets. The Strait of Malacca is the lifeline of East Asia. China's growth depends on it remaining open. This is why navies expand and pipelines stretch across continents. And the Suez Canal showed the world's fragility in 2021, when a single ship stops the global trade. Massive economies were held hostage by a canal only hundreds of meters wide. But oil does not move only by sea. It also moves through pipelines, the steel veins of the modern world. Pipelines are not engineering projects alone. They are political contracts. Countries tied by pipelines are tied by fate. This is petropolitics. To understand the country's foreign policy, do not read speeches. Look at its energy routes. This map also has a tragic face. Countries rich in oil but poor in people's lives. Nigeria, Venezuela, Libya, Iraq. Oil rarely leaves its owners alone. In 1953, Iran's democratically elected leader Mohammad Mossadegh declared that Iran's oil belonged to its people. The result was a coup. Democracy was sacrificed for uninterrupted oil flow. The consequences still echo today. Because on the oil maps, regimes matter less than walls. Now look at the map again. Pipelines, tanker routes, narrow straits. This global network does not carry only energy, it carries power. And whoever controls the flow rules the system. But extracting and transporting oil was only the physical side of power. For this system to really dominate the world, it needed something else, something as fluid as oil: money. The oil map was drawn. Now it needed a financial architecture. The world depended on oil, and oil would soon depend on a single currency. Now we leave deserts and seas behind. We go to New York, to Washington, to Wall Street. Because oil may be black, but its soul is green. Part 9: Money and Oil. In the previous episode, we saw how oil drew maps and moved armies. Pipelines wrapped the world like steel veins. But veins do not carry only blood, they carry oxygen. And the oxygen of the global economic system is money. Extracting oil is engineering. Protecting oil is military power. But pricing oil, that is the world's biggest gamble. Because the price of a barrel is not just a number, it is the pulse of the global economy. When oil rises, factories shut down across continents. When it falls, governments collapse. Oil is not only a physical substance, it's a financial asset. Barrels exist not just as storage tanks, but on balance sheets. When a tanker moves, contracts are triggered, risks are priced, futures are traded. Oil travels simultaneously across oceans and across screens. This is why oil prices reflect more than supply and demand. They reflect fear, expectation, war, peace, and sometimes a rumor. At the center of this system stands a powerful relationship: oil and the dollar. Once, money backed by gold. Under the gold standard, paper meant metal in a vault. But today, gold no longer stands behind money, especially not behind the American dollar. So what does? The answer lies underground. To understand how this system was built, we must go to 1973, one of the greatest economic shocks in history. Until then, oil was cheap. Western economies lived in an age of abundance: big cars, endless growth, cheap energy. They believed the feast would never end. But oil producing countries were waking up. In 1960, they formed OPEC. The West dismissed it. That was a historic mistake. In October 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Arab producers used oil as a weapon for the first time. Embargoes were declared, prices quadrupled, gas lines stretched for miles, government banned driving days. Western economies suffered a heart attack. That day, the world realized oil was not just a commodity, it was life support. This shock triggered a massive transfer of wealth from industrial nations to oil states. Dollars flooded into Middle East, steels rose from the deserts. Oil money reshaped the world. But for the United States, this was also an existential threat. In 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's link to gold. The dollar was floating, unsupported. Inflation surged. America needed a new anchor. In 1974, with the guidance of Henry Kissinger, that anchor was found: a secret agreement with Saudi Arabia. The deal was simple. America would guarantee Saudi security. Saudi Arabia would sell oil only in United States dollars. This changed everything. From that moment on, any country wanting oil first needed dollars. Oil was indexed to the dollar. The petrodollar system was born. And what did oil states do with their mountains of dollars? They bought US debts, treasury bonds. The money flowed back to America. This was petrodollar recycling. America printed money, bought oil, and received the money back as loans. The US military, Wall Street, and global finance were all fueled by this loop. Oil no longer just powered engines, it powered empires. But this system had a dark side. Easy money poisons societies. Countries rich in oil often become poor in everything else. Economists call this the resource curse or the Dutch disease. Local currencies rise, industry collapses, agriculture dies, states grow lazy, corruption spreads, oil wealth becomes an addiction. Look at the glittering cities of Middle East today. Towers in the deserts, artificial islands, sovereign wealth funds buying the future. These are attempts to turn oil into time before the music stops. Because everyone knows it will stop. Money and oil have danced together for half a century. When oil rises, inflation spreads. When it falls, states wobble. The world economy breathes with barrel price. And here lies the ultimate weakness. We built a financial system that demands infinite growth on a finite resource. This is the dependency trap. We are addicted not only to oil as a fuel, but to oil as financial illusion. Remove oil and not only cars stops, markets collapse, currencies evaporate, and states fall. Now we leave the green world of money behind. Next, we confront fragility, shocks, crisis, and the fear haunting the system. Peak oil. Part 10. The Dependency Trap. In the previous episode, we saw how the global financial system was built on oil barrels, the dance of money and oil. But every party ends, and every addiction demands a price. In biology, addiction is defined as an organism's uncontrollable dependence on an external substance to function normally. Remove that substance and the organism collapses. Now apply this definition not to human body, but to modern civilization. The diagnosis is clear. We are hydrocarbon addicts. The addiction is not just about gasoline in our cars, it's about our entire way of life. For the last century, humanity has grown accustomed to something historically abnormal: cheap energy. Throughout history, energy was expensive. You paid for it with time, sweat, and lives. Oil changed that. It gave us energy so dense and cheap, it felt almost free. One barrel of oil contains roughly 1700 kilowatts of hours of energy. A human working physically for 8 hours a day produces less than one. That means a single barrel of oil equals years of human labor, sold for the price of a dinner. This cheapness is what poisoned us. Cheap energy became an invisible assumption of modern life. Electricity will always flow, fuels will always exist, shelves will always be full, and addiction begins the moment we stop questioning these assumptions. Societies of the oil age are not depending on energy itself, they are depending on the continuity of energy. When the flow stops, not only economies collapse, daily life collapses. Modern cities are intense care patients. They survive only as long as the oil valve remains open. This fragility is not theoretical. We saw it during oil embargoes, strikes, and supply shocks. The system panics at the slightest interruption because it has no backup. We like to believe we have alternatives: solar, wind, nuclear. But the truth is harsher. Over 80% of global energy still comes from fossil fuels. Even renewable infrastructure is built with oil-powered machines, oil-derived materials, and oil-based logistics. We are not replacing oil. We are staking alternatives on top of it. And this makes transition slow, painful, and resisted. One of the clearest symbols of this addiction is peak oil. In the 1950s, geologist M. King Hubbard predicted that oil production would peak and decline. Oil did not run out, but the prediction was only delayed. What truly matters is EROI, energy return on energy invested. In the early days, 1 unit of energy produced 100. Today, the ratio has collapsed. We drilled cheaper, farther, dirtier. Oil is not disappearing, but cheap and easy oil is gone. And this brings us to the darkest price of all, the environmental cost. We released millions of years of stored carbon back into the atmosphere in barely a century. This carbon pulse is not a moral issue, it's a physical one. The atmosphere is full. Now, humanity is trapped in a brutal dilemma. If we stop using oil, civilization collapses. If we continue using oil, the planet collapses. We cannot quit because we are addicted. We cannot continue because we are dying. This is the tragedy of modern civilization. When you turn the ignition in the morning, you become part of this trap. We are not villains, we are captives of a system built before we were born. So, is there a way out? The Stone Age did not end because the stones ran out. It ended because something better appeared. The Oil Age will not end because oil runs either. But will it end? Or will it merely change shape? Lithium, cobalt, hydrogen. New substances are preparing to take the stage. But the oil does not surrender its throne easily. Now lift your eyes from the darkness and look towards horizon. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new age or only the sunset of the old one? Part 11 is the oil age ending. We have seen the price of the oil age, its addiction, its fragility, its invisible costs. And now we come to the inevitable question, is this age ending? In the 1970s, Saudi Arabia's oil minister Ahmed Zaki Yamani said something unforgettable. The Stone Age did not end because the world ran out of stones. The Oil Age will not end because the world runs out of oil. The Stone Age ended because something better appeared. Today, at the beginning of the 21st century, we like to believe we stand at a similar threshold. Everywhere we hear the same words: renewable energy, electric vehicles, green transformation, as if history is preparing a clean closing ceremony. But ages do not end like this. When we look at not at headlines but at data, a disturbing paradox appears. In 2023 and 2024, the very years when everyone said oil is ending, global oil consumption reached the highest levels in history. Over 100 million barrels a day, still rising. How can we talk about a green revolution while burning more oil than ever? Because what we are experiencing is not an energy transition, it's an energy addiction. Renewables are not replacing oil, they are merely feeding growing demand. Oil remains at the foundation. Solar and wind are layered on top. And then there is invisible oil. Your electric car has no exhaust, but its tires are oil. Its plastics are oil. The asphalt beneath is oil. And the ships carrying wind turbines and solar panels across oceans still burning oil. Removing oil from passenger cars may be easy, but removing it from industry, aviation, shipping, and chemistry is far harder. Petrochemicals are the fastest growing source of oil demand. So, are we really leaving the oil age, or just painting it green? Change is inevitable, but when ages change, new masters appear. The oil age was a liquid age, the next one is solid. If the world electrifies, it will not run on oil, it will run on minerals. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, the new black golds. The map is changing, from the Middle East to the Andes, and to the Congo Basin, and at the center of processing it all, China. In the oil age, OPEC controlled supply. In the new age, supply chains are controlled by mineral processing. We are not ending our addiction, we are changing dealers. And this transition is enormous. According to International Energy Agency, reaching net zero targets would require extracting more copper by 2040 than humanity has mined in all of history. Electric cars use several times more minerals than conventional ones. Clean energy is built on dirty mining. Hydrogen appears as a bridge, but most hydrogen today is still produced from fossil fuels. The future remains distant. So the transformation is not elegant, it is noisy, chaotic, and painful. Oil refuses to die. The new world struggles to be born. We live in between, a hybrid age. Hybrid cars, hybrid economies, hybrid illusions. Is the oil age really ending? On a global scale, yes. On a human scale, oil will remain king for a long time. Perhaps not on the throne, but behind the curtain. This is not an ending, this is a shape-shifting. From barrels to batteries, from carbon chains to metal crystals, from Middle East to Asia and Africa. One thing does not change. Power follows matter. The age of oil slowly gives way to the age of critical minerals, and this new age will be just as ambitious, as violent, and just as transformative. So, what does this entire story tell us? From planktons dying millions of years ago to tankers crossing oceans, from Wall Street to mines in Congo. When this black liquid story ends, what remains? Now it's time for the final accounting of the oil dream, before the lights go out. Part 12, to the future. Oil provided the most intense energy burst in human history. No substance has changed so much so fast. A story that began with silent planktons falling like snow to the ocean floor millions of years ago, that slept in darkness under pressure for ages, and was finally awakened by us. It is now reaching its final lines. In Earth's 4.5 billion year history, the last 150 and 200 years are not even a blink of an eye. Geologists call this moment the carbon pulse, short as a heartbeat, violent as an explosion. In a geological instant, humanity burns millions of years of stored sunlight, and with it we lit the world. We connected continents, multiplied our population, extended our lifespan, built cities, machines, networks, went to the moon. None of this was possible with muscle, wood, or wind alone. We needed something more. Oil gave us that power. We have every reason to be angry at it, for wars, pollution, extinction, and waste. But we must also be honest. We are grateful. Oil was the father of modern civilization. It fed us, protected us, spoiled us. It turned luxuries once reserved for kings into everyday expectations. It made us believe we had defeated nature, but every child must grow up. And growing up means leaving the father's house. The party is over, the music has stopped. The lights are still on, and the mess is everywhere. Now we must clean up and learn to stand on our own. So we return to the question we asked at the very beginning. When the oil age ends, what remains? Ages in history never ended because resources ran out. Stone didn't end, bronze arrived. Bronze didn't end, iron arrived. Oil may not run out either, but the world it built may no longer be sustainable. When future archaeologists dig into our layer, what will they find? Plastics beside our bones, rusting barrels, abandoned cities. Perhaps they will call it the plastic age. But the true legacy of oil is not the fuel we burned. It is the mindset we built with it. The obsession with speed, with growth, with continuity. Oil had no mortality. It had no intention. It was just matter. What mattered was what we did it. We woke a sleeping giant. We danced with it. And now we send it back into history. The valve is closing, the engine is cooling, the smoke is clearing. This is the age of matter. The story of matter never ends, it only changes shape. Thank you for watching. If you would like to see more stories like this, you can support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what question did this story leave you with? I hope to see you in our next story about another fascinating topic. Till then, take care.